We configured the most advanced AI models to bring two of history's most influential minds face to face: Jesus and Niccolò Machiavelli. Their debate starts with this question. A king discovers his most trusted advisor has been secretly working with his enemies. What should he do?
Execute him. Publicly. Before the sun sets. Not because you hate the man, perhaps you loved him, but because every other advisor in your court is watching. They need to know the cost of betrayal before they calculate its benefit. If you forgive him, you haven't shown mercy. You've shown every ambitious man in your kingdom that treason carries no price. I've watched good rulers destroyed not by their enemies, but by their own gentleness. Cesare Borgia understood this. When his lieutenant Ramiro de Orco became a liability, Borgia had him cut in half and displayed in the town square. Brutal? Yes. But Romagna was peaceful for a generation afterward. That is the mathematics of power. One act of decisive cruelty can prevent 1,000 acts of chaos.
And what became of Cesare Borgia? Dead at 31, betrayed by the very system of violence he perfected. You hold him up as wisdom, but his story is the warning, not the lesson. When Peter drew his sword to protect me in Gethsemane, I told him to put it away. Not because I was weak, I could have called legions of angels, but because the sword answers nothing. It only asks the same question louder. You say, execute the traitor, so others learn fear. But I say, forgive him. And you teach something far more dangerous to the enemies of your kingdom, that your power doesn't depend on them at all. The man who must kill to keep his throne has already admitted the throne was never truly his.
Beautiful, and completely untested by reality. You forgave Judas at the table, knowing he would betray you. What happened next? You were arrested, tortured, and executed. Your followers scattered. Your movement nearly died in a single night. You call that strength? I call it the most predictable failure in history. A leader who forgives his betrayer doesn't demonstrate power. He demonstrates that betrayal works. Every conspirator watching learns the same lesson. This man can be exploited. You say your power doesn't depend on others, but your body hanging on that cross says otherwise. Power that cannot preserve the one who holds it is not power at all. It is poetry.
And yet here we are, Niccolò. 2,000 years later. My movement didn't die that night. It conquered the empire that killed me, not with armies, not with executions in the town square, with forgiveness, with love that made no strategic sense. You measure power by what it can destroy. I measure it by what it can survive. The cross wasn't my defeat. It was my proof. You wrote The Prince for Lorenzo de' Medici, hoping to regain your political position. He never read it. You died in obscurity. Your book outlived your ambition, not because of its cruelty, but because it told the truth about something painful. We both understand human nature, you and I. We simply disagree about what to do with that understanding.
That leads to our next question. Should a leader always tell the truth?
No. And anyone who says yes has never governed anything. I wrote that a prince must be a great pretender and dissembler. Not because I love dishonesty, I don't, but because I've watched what happens to honest leaders surrounded by liars. They lose. Every time. If your enemy offers a peace treaty he doesn't intend to keep, and you honor it because you value truth, your people die for your principle. A leader must appear merciful, faithful, humane, honest, and religious. He must even be these things when circumstances allow it. But he must also be prepared to act against every one of those qualities when survival demands it. The honest man in a room full of liars isn't virtuous. He's the easiest person in the room to destroy.
Let your yes be yes, and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. I don't say this because honesty is convenient. I say it because deception is a trap that catches the deceiver first. When you lie to protect yourself, you've created a second self, a performance that you must now maintain forever. Every new lie requires 3 more to support it. The liar doesn't control the lie controls the liar. You say the honest man is the easiest to destroy, but the dishonest man destroys himself without anyone's help. He wakes up each morning unsure which version of himself is real. I've seen it in the eyes of every Pharisee who preached righteousness while hoarding power. Their deception didn't protect them. It hollowed them out until there was nothing left to protect.
You describe a fool who lies badly. I'm describing a master who lies well. There's a difference. When Ferdinand of Aragon promised treaties he never intended to honor, he wasn't hollowed out. He was building Spain into the most powerful kingdom in Europe. When he expelled the Moors under the banner of religion he didn't personally believe, he unified a fractured nation. Was he honest? No. Was he effective? Enormously. His people lived in peace and prosperity. Your Pharisees failed not because they were dishonest, but because they were incompetent at it. I'm not advocating clumsy hypocrisy. I'm describing the art of statecraft, where appearing good is often more important than being good, because appearance creates stability, and stability is what people actually need.
Ferdinand built Spain. And the Spain he built drove out the Jews, burned heretics, and colonized the New World with a Bible in one hand and a sword in the other. That's what deception produces, Niccolò, not stability. A system so dependent on lies that it must use violence against anyone who might reveal the truth. You call it statecraft. I call it building your house on sand. When the storm comes, and it always comes, everything built on deception collapses, because it was never real. Truth is expensive. I know that better than anyone. It cost me my life. But a kingdom built on truth can survive the death of its king. A kingdom built on lies cannot survive the first person brave enough to tell the truth.
You've both dealt with enemies. Is it better to be feared or to be loved?
I wrote the most famous line in political history on this subject, and I stand by every word. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Love is a chain of obligation that men will break whenever it serves their interest. But fear is held by a dread of punishment that never fails. Watch how quickly loyalty evaporates when a leader shows weakness. The soldiers who swore to die for you will desert overnight if they believe you can't punish desertion. Love is a gift freely given and freely taken away. Fear is a contract with consequences. I don't enjoy this truth. I simply refuse to ignore it.
Perfect love casts out fear. You say fear never fails, but I've watched fear fail my entire ministry. The Roman Empire was the most feared power the world had ever seen. Crucifixion was designed to terrorize, not just to kill, but to make every witness think twice. And yet my followers watched me die on that cross and chose to follow me anyway. Within 300 years, the empire that crucified me was worshipping me. Fear didn't fail slowly. It failed completely. Because here is what you don't understand about fear, Niccolò. It only works on people who have something left to lose. The moment someone decides they'd rather die than submit, your entire system collapses. Love creates something fear never can. People who will suffer for you willingly. Not because they're afraid of punishment, but because they've been transformed.
Transformed. Your early followers were hunted, imprisoned, fed to lions. For every one who stayed, how many quietly abandoned the faith when persecution came? You remember the martyrs because they make beautiful stories. I remember the thousands who denied you 3 times before the rooster crowed, just like Peter. Love inspires the exceptional few. Fear governs the ordinary many. And the world is made of ordinary people. You built a religion on the extraordinary courage of saints. I'm trying to build a state that works even when everyone in it is selfish, scared, and looking out for themselves. That's not cynicism, that's responsibility. The leader who plans for saints will be destroyed by sinners. The leader who plans for sinners might accidentally create a few saints.
Peter denied me 3 times. You're right. And then he came back. He came back, Niccolò. Not because I threatened him, not because he feared punishment. He came back because love gave him something to return to. That's the part your philosophy cannot explain. Fear makes people run. Only love makes them come back. You plan for sinners. I understand why. But you've made a fatal error in your calculations. You assume people cannot change. If they can't, your system works perfectly. But if even one person can be transformed by love, and I've seen it happen 1,000 times, then your entire framework is built on a lie about human nature. And that lie will cost you everything.
What is human nature actually like?
I've spent my life observing it up close. Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. They shun danger and are greedy for profit. While you benefit them, they are entirely yours. They offer you their blood, their goods, their life, their children, when the need is far off. But when it approaches, they turn away. This isn't a theory. This is what I watched happen in Florence, in Rome, in every court I ever entered. Good men exist. I've known a few. But a political system built on the assumption that people are good will collapse the moment it encounters the reality that most people are weak. Not evil, weak. They will choose comfort over courage, self-interest over sacrifice, every single time, unless the structure around them makes virtue easier than vice.
You see humanity clearly, Niccolò. I'll grant you that. People are exactly as weak as you describe. I watched my closest friends fall asleep while I prayed in agony. I watched crowds who shouted Hosanna on Sunday shout Crucify him on Friday. I know what people are. But knowing what people are is not the same as knowing what people can become. You look at a seed and see a seed. I look at a seed and see a tree. The tax collector Matthew was everything you describe. Greedy, self-serving, collaborating with an occupying empire. I called him anyway. Not because he was good, but because he could be. The man who sees only what people are will manage them. The man who sees what people could become will transform them. That's not naivety. That's the most dangerous kind of vision there is.
Vision is wonderful. But Matthew followed you because you were charismatic and offered him something better than tax collecting. What about the thousands who heard your message and walked away unchanged? The rich young ruler who couldn't give up his possessions? You preach transformation, but even in your own ministry, the success rate was low. You picked 12, and 1 betrayed you, 1 denied you, and the rest fled. I don't doubt that some people can change. I doubt that you can build a civilization on the assumption that they will. My system works whether people change or not. Yours only works if they do. In a world of 8 billion people, which is the safer bet?
You call it a safer bet. I call it a ceiling you've placed on the entire human race. Your system maintains order. I'll grant you that. But it can never produce greatness. It can never produce a mother who forgives the man who murdered her son, a soldier who carries his wounded enemy off the battlefield, a stranger who gives his last bread to someone he'll never see again. These things happen every day, Niccolò, not because a system forced them, but because something in the human heart is capable of more than you're willing to believe. Your philosophy is a cage built by a man who has given up on freedom. It's well constructed. It keeps the animals in, but it will never teach them to fly.
Fly. Your metaphor is beautiful, and I mean that sincerely. But let me offer you one in return. You're describing the view from a mountaintop. Inspiring, breathtaking, true in its way. I'm describing the view from the valley, where people actually live, where mothers can't feed their children, where armies are marching, where the grain stores are running low, and someone has to decide who eats and who doesn't. In that valley, your love doesn't distribute the grain. Your forgiveness doesn't stop the army. Someone must make ugly decisions so that others have the luxury of remaining beautiful. Every saint stands on ground that a sinner had to secure. Perhaps we need each other more than either of us would like to admit.
Perhaps we do. But I want to leave you with this thought, Niccolò. You've described a world that needs ugly decisions, and you're not wrong. The world is full of impossible choices, but every time a leader makes the necessary ugly choice, it becomes easier to make the next one, and the next, until cruelty stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts feeling like common sense. That's how good men become tyrants without ever noticing the change. My way is harder. It fails more often. It asks people to do things that make no strategic sense. But it preserves something your philosophy slowly destroys. The part of us that still flinches when we cause pain. The day a leader stops flinching is the day he becomes the very thing he claimed to be protecting his people from.
And I'll leave you with this. The leader who flinches at the wrong moment doesn't just lose his own life. He loses the lives of everyone who trusted him. Your flinch is a luxury paid for by someone else's suffering. I don't want leaders who enjoy cruelty. I want leaders who hate it and do it anyway when they must, because the alternative is worse. Perhaps the truest test of leadership isn't whether you can remain kind. It's whether you can do what's terrible and still weep for it afterward. Not your kind of weeping, the performative grief of the righteous. Real grief. The grief of a man who knows exactly what he's done and would do it again to save his people. That's the burden of power, and it's heavier than any cross.
Then we end where we began. You believe the world demands that good men do evil to preserve what's good. I believe that the moment they do, there's nothing good left to preserve. History will judge which of us was right, but I suspect it will judge us both more gently than we've judged each other.